Oh, hello there. Good afternoon. Um, so I watched this mini documentary that Vice put out. I've checked them out every now and then. 15 minutes. It doesn't take long. I will give some credit to the making of this documentary. Um, it is a bit better than most, but there are some definitely fundamental flaws with it, and I'll go over them with you. Um, for one thing, they overemphasize the use of Russians' equipment being from Cold War era. There's an example where they pick up a rocket, and it was from 1989, and the thing is, what people don't know, because the way they present it, they go, "Oh, look, the Russian army's not as strong as people thought it was. They're using outdated technology, blah 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 blah." But there are actually intelligent reasons for this, and I'm gonna go over them with you. One of them being is the Soviets made so much fucking shit. You wouldn't believe. Like, as far as missiles, tanks, aircraft, all that sort of stuff. That's basically all the Soviet Union did. They were a military economy. And properly maintained, those are weapons of mass destruction. And work just as well as today. Everyone likes to think, oh, the next new tank or the next new aircraft would, dance circles around these things. And it would, but the thing is, you can't risk the enemy getting a hold of that technology and seeing exactly where your country stands. So the general message they're putting forward, going, "Oh, look at how pathetic they are. They're using 30 or 40-year old technology," and the reality is they can't afford to lose that stuff, their new stuff. That's why they don't give the Ukrainians, a part of the reason they don't give the Ukrainians more up to date technology. I mean, it was even said in one mini excerpt of something, I forget what it was, on YouTube, where said they were using World War I weapons. No, for several reasons. One, World War weapons don't usually work. They are completely, it's out of the question. They wouldn't be there, and they're worth money just as is. So, that was just a bogus story. Um, and the Soviets, as well as other armies, didn't actually have the best weapons in World War One. I mean, they more specialized in obnoxious gases and trench warfare and things like that. I mean, have you seen the tanks that they drove in World War One? They didn't have very many of them, and they were very crappy. Um, Another reason is they have warehouses filled with Cold War tech. And for the Russians, it becomes costly to guard this stuff. So they may as well use it. In the mindset of, they're invading the country in the first place. They got excess amount of equipment and they need to get rid of inventory. Not a nice thing, but that's just part of it. Um, they were going on about how they were sending in unprofessional troops. Morale was a big question for the Russian soldiers. They were said they didn't know exactly what they were doing, that they're using, young conscripts who don't know what they're doing. That's a bit misleading. Conscript would mean they were picked out and told they have to go to war, and they had no choice in the matter. That's slightly different from growing up in a culture where you were known for being a military power and taking pride in that and joining because of that. That's called being brainwashed. That's not the same thing as forcibly being conscripted. Um, as far as the reason why they would send them in first is, well, they would need experience. You don't send in your best first. That's always been, the military mantra. Like when Europeans first arrived in Australia and Canada and basically everywhere else. They didn't send in their best guys. They send the idiots in first to figure out exactly what they're dealing with. Um, so, yes, especially with the early white European settlers, there was the promise of great wealth, and some of them made out like bandits, taking land from, or conquering land, I should say, from the Native Americans or Native Canadians or whatever's, any persons that were living there. But that's a different subject. As far as, they also showed an excerpt where they were collecting Russian casualties, and they said that they were going to deliver them back to the Russian Federation. They said they'd been there a few months, and maybe they had been. Maybe the Ukrainians let them rot for a little while. So, automatically that doesn't make them seem like, oh, Mr. Good Guy, we're giving you back your dead, just like that. We're going to let it rot a little bit first, rub some salt in the wound, and then give it back to you to display we're morally superior to the world, and we're beating you, and we're also taking the piss out of you at the same time. What condition are those bodies when they get there is the real question. Because there's a lot of animosity between both the Ukrainians and the Russians. That's the reality of war. And I noticed something about the Russian corpses. Was that they wore steel helmets. Steel helmets have not been used for decades. Simply because, that is tech that, cannot really be improved upon. They have Kevlar helmets now, and they're not that expensive. I mean, like, before the Kevlar, the Western powers used ballistic nylon, which is kind of like Kevlar, but not as good. And in fact, those helmets were terrible. But a helmet isn't designed to stop a bullet. It's designed to stop something falling on your head during a bombardment. Whether it be glass or part of a building or a tree, a branch or something like that. All that stuff, you don't want a tree branch falling on your head. You don't want a bomb either falling on your head, but if that happens, then you shit out of luck on that one. He also said, oh, these bodies, they look like they've been shelled, right? And I'm telling you, no, they weren't. Most of their body parts were on them as they were being dragged away into those corpse-removing vehicles. So that was another crafty way of saying something that wasn't exactly true. I mean, yes, I'm sure there are corpses in the Ukraine that are completely, dismembered and cannot be shown on any video network system in the West, and for good reason. There was one Ukrainian Canadian, born in Vancouver, actually, of all places, who said he had some buddies, and one of them got his leg blown off, and the other one was in a coma and things like that. And that I do believe. And the fortress, you could call it a fortress, I suppose. It was a real sturdy building, from what they said. Was receiving shelling, and they were like, "Oh, the Russians are attacking us." But I took one look at that reporter, and I went, "He isn't being squeamish at all, and neither of all the other soldiers." You know why? Because it was fake. It was Ukrainians attacking themselves, and with weapons that were not going to bring down that building. That was just for the vice, propaganda machine. And it would work on most people, except I study military propaganda. I've sat through Russian military propaganda. Oh, it's nauseating. And the West, World War II propaganda, and even the Cold War propaganda, and the Vietnam propaganda, it's all very mind-numbing. It's bad. It's just bad. But like I said, Vice has made it a little bit better. And to sort of, add a little bit of gruesomeness to it, they even had some decapitated goats that had been skinned so that somebody, a young person could watch this stuff. This is catering to those punk teenagers we got over here. I'm a grown up, and you know what? A skinned goat, I would never do it. But you ever walk down the meat department in a store? That's exactly what it looks like. Maybe there won't be any flies on it, but essentially, you're looking at a piece of meat. It's, I don't know what to say about that. So there's that educational fact. This guy in this video was wearing the wrong type of helmet. Like, that looked like an airsoft helmet. Completely inadequate for being in a war zone. And not only that, they spoke to a Ukrainian old woman who wouldn't leave her home, and for good reason. She just felt that she couldn't do it. I mean, she had her own reasons. I'm not exactly sure why. She mentioned ringing in her ears when a bomb hit part of her building. And the thing is, she'd be deaf. If it was close enough to damage her building, she would be deaf. Like, those bombs make big, loud noises. And if you're there, especially as an elderly old woman, it's going to make you deaf on one side of your face, if not both sides. So a little ringing, if that's all you heard, that bomb didn't hit your building. It hit a few buildings away. This is your basic stuff here, you watch a few war movies, you pick things up. And it's kind of good to understand the situation, I don't think there's anything evil in learning. I think understanding a problem is part of the way you solve one. Real nasty business, that is. But the Russians are not as stupid and not as incompetent as the West is portraying them as, which is dangerous because something may come out of left field. We don't know. Hopefully it won't. But these news outlets like Vice, have a watch. It's educational. It won't traumatize you. And, it's worth listening to. But don't believe everything they have to say. That's what's important. Think for yourself. Don't let somebody tell you what to think. Because that's what people like to do. They like to tell other people what to think. And I'm not one of those type of people. I don't care if, people think a certain way or do certain things. Unless, they're malignant things, then obviously I do care. But in your day-to-day life, if somebody, likes gasoline in their cars and doesn't want to convert to electric cars, I really don't care. I mean, do you know how much coal the Chinese burn every year? Creating a toxic smog in the sky? I mean, get a hold of yourself, man. Anyway, I'll try to make this video a little bit shorter than my normal one, so I will talk to you people later, and have a good one.